Okay, so the next thing we do, we're going to prime up this, ready for the gloss coat of white going over the top. Now, to stop it being black at one end and obviously lighter and things, it would take lots of coats. Easier to go through with a nice grey coat. I've got some XF80 here, 50/50 with Tamiya, about 30 psi, and we're just going to spray the entire model. So nice, gentle, even coats, right the way over everywhere. Don't forget, we're looking as well to make sure that there's no, obviously, any build-up of glue that is going to make for funny joins and seams and things like that. Making sure all the filler is nicely in. We can check panel lines at this point and make sure they're all okay and all as they should be. And really, as we said before, this is your last chance to make sure everything is okay. Also, the thing with using primer, obviously it's there and it's going to be great because it's going to help the paint stick to it. We're using a gloss coat of white, and gloss is notoriously hard to get right, and a lot of it is all in the preparation. You get the preparation okay, and then the gloss work will follow and go through. Out of paint now, I'm going to continue getting this on, all ready for the gloss work. Okay, so when you're doing any type of glossing at all, the most important thing you've got to have is a good coat for it to go down onto. You don't want any lumps, you don't want it grittiness, it's got to feel quite smooth everywhere. Now, we've primed this one with a Tamiya acrylic. It was XF80, 50/50 split, straight down over the entire thing, and it's given us a very nice, very smooth finish. And when you're up close, it looks smooth. It doesn't look gritty, pebbly like sandpaper. Anything else like that will stop it being a nice, good gloss coat. The second thing, when you're going to go, when you're putting it on, normally we spray our air pressure around about sort of 20 to 35 sort of psi for generally just blasting away. Gloss work, you need to lower your air pressure down, because otherwise what's happening is you're forcing the paint onto the surface, where obviously with glossing we want to layer it on. So lots of thinner layers, just laying it on, a bit like if you're going to be spraying with an alclad finish or something like that. So for this one, we're going to be using X2, which is Tamiya's gloss white. So what we do, it's had a good shake beforehand. You don't have to worry about shaking or stirring or anything else like that. You just treat it as if you would a normal matte finish. So we're going to fire up the compressor to let it come up to power. That way, when you're spraying, perhaps you haven't set up your air pressure right, it's not going to continuously creep up, and before you know it, you're wondering why it's a bit funny, but you've got 30 psi air pressure. Usual thing we're going to do, so we're going to put in Tamiya acrylic thinners first. So we're going to put a couple of mils in there. That's in there, and then we're just going to pour in to make about a 50/50 paint mix. We'll just pop the lid on over there, and we'll give it a bit of a stir up with a cocktail stick. And this is the other thing, make sure it's had a good mix, because you don't want to be spraying around, going on quite nicely, and then the paint gets thicker because it hasn't mixed particularly well with the actual thinners on there. So you've got to make sure it's had a good mix. We want it a little bit thicker than milk, but we don't want it probably quite as thick as when we're putting down a matte coat or something like that, or a flat finish. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Air pressure, as I said, looking at the tank now, it's come up quite a bit, so we're just going to turn that down. So there we go, that's about 25 psi. What I'll do is I'll start on the underside, and we can work our way around absolutely everything. So as you can see, it's a bit patchy underneath there, but it is all nice and smooth, and we're all okay as we are. We're going to check our flow first. Okay, we're happy with that, and then we're just going to gently get it on there to start with. We just pump our trigger a bit. Okay, and then we can put down our first coat. Go back over, and there we go, we're building it up just like that. Then we'll come from the other direction on the wing, nice and slowly building up the paint. Okay, just like that, and there we go, we've got one white wing. So obviously we've got to do absolutely everything on this model all together. So this first coat is quite a thick one, and what we'll do is we'll come back with a thinner coat on the next one if it's covering well. As you can see, we're walking it up nice and painting it on. There we go, just like that. And then we just come from the other side, nicely up and down. And we're just coming in from all angles to get that underside done. And because this one's on undercarriage, what we can do, we can actually put it down, just like that. Okay, and we can carry on over the top. And every now and again, what we want to do is just check the actual needle hasn't got a, you know, like a blob as it has here, as you can see that. So we want to wipe that off and stop any build-up. And there we go, we're out of our first colour cup. So what we're going to do, we're going to load up and then we'll continue. Okay, so two quite heavy, thick coats of white on there now, and it's just about touchable if you keep your finger moving. Obviously, if you grab it, you're going to squash it. What we're going to do now is turn the air pressure right down to about 10 psi. So you can hardly hear it at all. We just want to check our flow. Coming through nice and steady, but it's very hard to see when you're doing it on white. So if I just get a piece of card here, we can see how it is, and as you see, it's a bit too speckly, so the paint is a little bit too thick to do that. So we just turn the air pressure up again, and that is about right. We've got just about the right type of consistency here. It's very wet if you hang around, but if you keep moving, you'll be okay. So what we're going to do now is just going to go quite slowly and lay this coat down right over the model, going all over. And what this will do, this will stop that orange peeling you might get effect. Sometimes you get it where you get like an orange peeling, and with any luck this will stop that happening because it's going on nice and slowly and a nice thick coat, and with any luck, it was, as I say, it'll flood the area and it will lay just flat, just how we want it. So what we do, we just very carefully lift up, turn around just so we can get to this other side, and we're just going to come back and do the same again on this side. And then we're going to leave this for about an hour to go off before we start going round on the underside and things like that. So if we just do the tail here as well, we can leave that literally now to go off because I don't want to touch it because we need to get this over and do the same on the underside, but I really want it to dry totally off first before you actually come near it again. Okay, so as you can see, we just started decaling on this one, and we've got the top side is done already. They're very thick decals on this, and I must admit, you know, in some cases they're a little bit hard to get to conform, certainly on the tail, which I've got on the go over here. It's on about a 6th or 7th coat of micro sole at the moment, trying to get it to bend in, but it is getting there, and because they're nice and thick, they're covering very well. And okay, we're just going over white, so we don't have to worry about it. The major problem one is the one on the nose. It's a horrible fit, so what I've done, I've placed it on, and then I'm going to sand off the nose and paint it red anyway. I'm just going to use literally the marking as a sort of a print of how it's going to be. Because if you are going to do it, X3 and X7 Tamiya and X2 are all the perfect colours for it, and they colour match the actual decal sheet to a T, so you don't have to worry about that whatsoever. There's going to be a little thing on the site for this if you've got it on the site, or if not, it's going to be actually on the new Tips and Tools DVD that's coming out as well, which is going to cover all of this, and I'm going to go into depth about decaling it on there because it's quite a good one to go. So you can do that, or if not, it's the usual thing with decaling. So it's going to take quite a long time to get all these on, so I'm just going to work through it and you can join me at the end. Okay, so there we go. That's the decaling done on this particularly tricky F-16. All of it all over the place. Did have a bit of trouble with the decals. Yes, a couple of them did crack, admittedly. I've had to go round. Did they conform as well? Yes, they did in certain areas, others no. The one around the nose here, particularly bad. And that's what I'm going to really run through with you now. Okay, as you can see down here, this is what I've been doing. If you get a situation where you're doing your decaling and it wrinkles up, it curls over to conform, especially on a round, you're going to get that thing where it folds up. The thing is, they are a bit ugly if you leave them there. So what I actually do, or the way I do it, here we have got a little bit happening on the nose here. Very, very fine sandpaper. Don't go in there ripping it apart, but all we're going to do is sand it off. Now, if it tears a hole, as it's done just there, as you can see, that's okay, that's because there was nothing going on below it. But what we're trying to do is sand in the area. Now, we don't want to run up too close to the edge because we're going to try and blow this in all very nicely without being able to see it. But you want to sand it so you get a nice edge. We don't want it to look like there's a crack. Obviously take decal out because the paint's got to try and fill it. So that's why you're using very old, type of situation here. As you can see, it's leaving paint on here. Sanding stick to rub gently, like we've done just there. You might be able to see we've done it all down here because this is where the big one was. So there again, we're just going to keep going, sanding it back because we're going to spray it. So what we're going to do, obviously, critical thing here, we don't want to get any overspray or anything else like that. We've got some Tamiya tape. Now, one of those things, make sure you run this over your back of your hand because you want it just to have enough stick to stick on, but you don't want to pull your decals off afterwards. You don't want to be in a situation where you think, oh, that's it, perfectly done. You pull off your actual, your decal, your tape, and you rip your decal clean off with it. There is always going to be the risk that's going to happen, but the more you put some oil onto it, so it's only just about got some grip, the better chance you'll have it will be fine. So what we're going to do, we're just going to run some tape right the way around, just like that. Very, very gently, and then very carefully again, using some more heavy duty tape. This, I'm putting it on my trousers now, picking up fibres because I want this to have no stickiness whatsoever. I'll do it off my jumper, anything you can, because we do not want this to stick. So there again, we're just going to put it on very, very lightly, not pushing it down hard, anything else like that, because as I say, we don't want to take the tape, the decals off that they're actually stuck to. So that's on there now. The nice thing, well, obviously Tamiya paint, Tamiya colour match. So we've got here some red, and this is the gloss red. So we just get some air in the old compressor to get us going there. And then what we're going to do, we're just going to give this a little bit of red and just blow it in. Now for the first coat we're going to put down on this, we're going to do it quite as a thick paint. So we're just putting in a drop of thinners. Okay, and a blob of red paint. And we're just going to give it a mix, just like that. Now, as I say, we want it quite thick because it's got a thick job to do, because we want it to fill the gap. Another cocktail stick for. We've got to fill that gap of where we've torn the decal. So I just get that up like that, and I just get some paper underneath. Now, for goodness sake, watch your overspray with this. Remember where you are, and remember you've got a white plane, which means it's going to be a bit of a nightmare if you get it onto any of the white. Okay, so I'm going to spray downwards, which is obviously that way, away from the body of the aircraft. And all we're going to do is just lightly put on one layer, and then obviously I'll lift, turn it over and say make sure you're spraying away, and then the one on the underside. Now obviously you could do this with brushing as well. Okay, what we're going to do, we've put on one layer now, which has almost got rid of it. So we're just going to have a break. It's gloss, it's not going to dry quick in your colour clap. Just give that a couple of minutes to dry off, and then we can come back and give it another coat, and then we'll come back, peel it off, and we'll have a look. Okay, so that's another one. We've literally just taken the tape off there. Now what we're going to very carefully do is take this off whilst it's still wet. The reason for that is I don't want it to dry with a big ridge line running all the way over it. So if we're very careful, we should be able to peel this off very lightly. We haven't damaged anywhere, and then what hopefully will happen is when it dries, it will all dry the same type of colour, and we can go for it like that. So there we go, that's that one done. At the same time, we've obviously got little bits of blue we need to take care of and just touch in here and there. Obviously we've got these parts just down here which we actually do by hand, and obviously over these little the bumps on the nose here, they've got to be done as well. So we can sort all those out now. Okay, so there we go. There's the F-16 all nicely done. A lot of work on the decals, all the rest of it. Now what we want to do now is basically seal it all in. Now the thing is, because we're using gloss, if you used to come along with a Future and whack it on, which you could, the trouble with it is you don't get a totally nice glossy finish if you're going to airbrush Future. You could just go over it with a normal clear gloss and airbrush it on, but if you want a really nice finish, I would recommend using something like the clear, the Future, and then that way what it is, we'll paintbrush it on a bit like we did with the Mustang, and we get that lovely thick glossy look to your paintwork, which will improve absolutely everything. Two things it'll do: it'll protect the decals and stop them from being damaged or anything else, or light getting to them, and also it will just help fill in any little orange peeliness that you might have on the white. I've got a little bit just down here on this wing and a little bit just underneath here, the writing here, and it will take care of that because it will literally gloss over the entire thing. So what we're going to do, we're just going to pop it into a bit of a tub just to make it easier to get it out. As I said, all we're going to do is literally going to brush on the Future completely, absolutely over everything. So if we start on the bottom to start with, we can go along and literally just paint it on just like so, and it'll give us that wonderful glossy look. Okay, so once you've done it like that, that's all nice and glossy, and as you can see, it probably looks quite shiny like that because it's extremely wet. Now what we want to do is make sure this keeps in a nice dry area, and we don't want dust obviously sitting on it. So what we're going to do, we're just going to carefully pick it up. We've got the box here, which handy enough it fits in a treat, just like that. And then what we can do, it's out of the box. We can just literally come along with the top half of the box. Okay, put it on top like that, and then that way it will keep it all nice and dust free, and just go and leave it for about an hour or two, come back, have a look at it, and then that way if you have got any situation where you've got runs and bits and pieces, you can give it another coat and physically melt the future off, but we'll see how it goes. So we're moving along very, very nicely, and then we basically got the F-16 over here. I was basically just going to finish it off, and that will be the end of it. From the top, looks absolutely fine, no problems at all, looking pretty fantastic. Unfortunately, on the underside, as you might be able to see here, I'll just pull you in a little bit closer, as you can see, the wings have completely cracked up. Now, to be honest, I haven't got a clue what's happened there. I can only assume over the gloss, and then obviously it had a coat of future before decaling, that actually what's happened is that it's actually sort of tightened up, over tightened and fractured. The thing is, it was okay for about 3 or 4 days. This one's been here, I've been working on other things, come back to do it, and we've got that. So, okay, somebody was once asking, why don't I show up the cock-ups that have happened? Well, here you are, this is a good one, I will show you how to do it. Basically, if you're happy it's had a good coat of paint all over it, of your clear, you should be able to mask onto it quite straightforward and quite easily. There's 2 ways of doing this. If you're quite happy with your brush painting, you could hand paint that in and redo it gloss. If you wanted to do it like I'm going to do it in a minute, I'm going to mask up major areas, block them in, do them gloss blue, and then freehand all this tiny little bits just in. It shouldn't take that long. And okay, you might start thinking, oh god, it's gone wrong, and big panic and everything else. This is what I'm saying, it's a problem. We're modelers, we'll work through it, it'll be okay. Touch wood. But we will be alright, we'll get there. So what I'm going to do, we're going to get some nice wide, I've got some 10mm here, I think this is 10mm, Tamiya tape to start with on the areas. Going to do them, and then I'm going to blow them in, and then what will happen is we'll have a look after it, see how it is. Do we need any others? Obviously picking out these ones in between the feathers at the back here, we're going to do by hand and use a brush. You could just go over this and use a brush, and in fact what I'm going to do, whilst I think about it, we're going to compare the two. My model, not yours, so what we'll do is we'll do this wing, we'll spray it, and we'll do the other wing, we'll do by hand, and then we can have a look at it and we can compare the two. So first off, I'm going to spray this wing and we're going to see how it looks at the end of that. Okay, here we go then. We've got the gloss blue, so we're going to go, let's out the spray bay. Touch of thinners first. I'm going to go for about a 50-50 mix. Obviously we're not going to need lots here. Okay, but it will need a very good mix. So I give that a good old whiz around in here. Right, the pressure I'm going to put down a little bit. At the moment it's up in the 30s. We're going to take it down to about 20-25 psi. So if I just turn that down now. Okay, there we go. That's about 20, and then obviously 25. When you pull the trigger, it goes back to about 22 psi. Okay, we check our flow first, away from the model. Okay, then we're just going to blow in this area. Now, overspray is going to be a nightmare. If you get overspray on the white, you're going to be in a situation where you're going to be coming back and forth trying to cover it for literally ever more. Now, as I say, this one is quite a thick mix we're going on here with to start with, because we need this to cover those cracks. Okay, just like so. Okay, cutting to air. Then what I'm going to do, turn the pressure down a little bit more. So we've got now down to about 15 psi, and we're just going to put in a wet coat. So it looks quite wet when we're on top. And there we go. Please put that in the holder. Now, hopefully, it'll be better if I do it this way. You can see it's on there. And then what we'll do, we'll pop over it with a coat of Future on a brush, and we'll dry it off. But when you compare it to the other side, obviously we're pretty well horribly cracked and all the rest of it. So if we gently, very gently when you're unmasking, pull very gently, because you don't want to be pulling anything with it, such as your decals, things like that. So I was just err on the side of caution every time I unmask. There's a little story to that, is that I actually, what you didn't see is when I was unmasking various bits and pieces around the front, I actually took the nose clean off with the blue all around the nose. So that has actually all been hand sprayed and hand painted back on. Okay, there we go. blue all done versus the top. So what we can do now, we can pop around with a nice good soft brush. Okay, so we have our blue here, and then literally we're going to get a nice soft brush. He says still looking for one as he speaks. So I've got a nice soft one here, into the blue, roll it, flood the brush, okay, brush it off to empty it out, pick up a little bit more. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll start on down here on this wing, and we're going to start at the wing root, and we're just going to pull back, and we're just going to brush in one direction. Just like so. Take it up to the edge, but not totally over. Okay, just like so. And then what we'll do is we'll roll the brush in the edge like that, and we'll try and pick out some of these feathers and go up to where they're cracked. And if we go slightly over, we can always pop back and either wipe it off, or we can actually redo the white. But we don't really, if we don't want to do it. Now the thing is, you do need a big brush. The reason why I use a big nice soft brush, you don't get many brush strokes in it. The nice thing is, out of all of this, is that the X3 blue is actually a very, very good match for these decals. So its saving grace is, even if you've got sort of brush marks, you probably won't see them. Okay, so I'm just going to go around all these areas and touch in anywhere that's got a crank. Now there's lots in here, so we can just pop around where's needed and fill them in. When I did the 132, the decals on it weren't brilliant, and because it was a large scale, I actually ended up hand painting it all afterwards. I used the decals as sort of a template, I suppose, and actually went round and painted it all afterwards by hand, and you couldn't tell the difference because the blue, as I say, is a perfect match. Very, very nice. So we just get going around here. And as I say, keep your brushing nice and sort of one direction if you want. I've got to do a little bit of clean up back here. I've just overshot, painting one up around the tail, but that's not so much of a problem. Okay, just take your time with it. Nice and steady. And you should be okay. Let's just do it here. And what I'll do is, I'm just going to do the doors as well. On the edge, just like so, and I'll just carry on painting all the way around, and hopefully you can join me at the end and it will all look lovely, and we would have cured the problem, and we can laugh about this at the end. But this is one of those things I was saying, there's no point having a complete fit over it when it goes wrong. You really just have to work the problem at trying to put it right the best way you can, and if that does mean drastic things like getting your paintbrush out and hand painting it, then so be it. I'm just going to touch in a little bit down this line.